Your day is winding down. They're just getting started. This is South Coast Tonight with Chris McCarthy and Marcus Farrow. They've got you covered on all the news of the day, from local issues to politics on both sides of the aisle. This is the place where the movers and shakers come to be heard, to listen, and where they're held accountable. This is South Coast Tonight on WBSM.
Welcome to South Coast Tonight. I'm Marcus Farrow. Joining me this evening is Congressman from the 4th Congressional District, recently reelected, Jake Auchincloss. Congressman, how are you?
I'm well, thanks, Marcus.
So you were recently reelected. You were the only member of the Massachusetts delegation to run unopposed. There was also elections statewide. We have a straight Democratic ticket. There was big wins for Democrats. A mayor from your district, Paul Heroux, was elevated to Bristol County Sheriff. You have a political action committee, too, that's dedicated to helping Democrats get elected across the country. What are your thoughts on how the midterms went here in Massachusetts and across the country?
Nationally, this was about voters rejecting extremism. Democrats hugely outperformed the historical trend. Just to give our listeners a sense, since the Great Depression in the 22 midterms, the president's party has lost on average of 28 seats. And although we don't have final tabulations for this cycle, there's no doubt that Democrats are going to do 2 or 3 times better than that. And the obvious question is why? What was different this time? Well, what was different is, one, Democrats fielded very strong candidates who were authentic to their district and who distanced themselves from hard left, outside the mainstream positions, particularly on crime, and who focused on lowering costs. And two, who drew a sharp contrast with Republicans who have really extremist positions, particularly on democracy and on a woman's right to make her own medical decisions.
We're speaking with Congressman Jake Auchincloss of the 4th Congressional District, recently reelected. Congrats on your reelection, by the way. Why do you think you ran unopposed this cycle after a pretty tight primary in 2020 when you got elected?
Yeah, I don't use as a marker of success or failure whether or not I have an opponent. I represent 800,000 people, and what any one of them might decide to do on a given cycle or not is outside my control. Right. What I can control is whether I'm doing my 3 core jobs well. That is, am I representing people's values, their values on the national stage at a time when democracy is under threat, at a time when women's rights are under threat? Am I doing a good job of making sure that my voice and vote on the Hill reflects people's values? That's number one. Number two, am I advancing their priorities? Are we getting stuff done for the district, whether it's water treatment facilities, whether it's roads and bridges, whether it's climate action and healthcare policy? Am I advancing people's core priorities? And then number three is, am I delivering excellent constituent services, whether it's passports or Social Security checks? When people are calling their congressional office, they're usually at the end of the line. They're usually really in a tough situation, and we need to be responsive and get things done for them. I think we did a good job on all 3 of those in my first term. It was a historic term. My first Wednesday in office was January 6th, and from there it was pandemic response, infrastructure, Afghanistan, guns, Ukraine, science, semiconductors, climate action. There's a lot going on. And I do think with a terrific team around me, I authentically represented people's values on the momentous questions of the day. I advanced their priorities, and we made sure that we were delivering strong constituent services.
We're speaking with Congressman Jake Auchincloss of the 4th Congressional District. So speaking of Ukraine, you recently pushed back on a proposal for a quote-unquote diplomatic push by some of your colleagues in the House and I think in the Biden administration as well. You called it an olive branch to a war criminal. Can you explain your position on that?
This was a letter signed by 30 members of the House on the left flank of the party. They rescinded the letter within 24 hours, which was the responsible thing to do. And the letter was calling for direct negotiations with Russia, which is not something that the Biden administration has put forward, and certainly not something that Ukraine has put forward at this point. We need to stand with Ukraine in all seasons, summer, winter, fall, because they're fighting on the front lines of the free world. We need to arm them with the materiel and the economic support that they need to sustain their fight. We need to continue to asphyxiate the Kremlin war machine with energy, central bank, and commercial sanctions. And we need to continue to work through our alliances, both NATO and East Asian alliances, to isolate Russia on the world stage. This has been the president's strategy. It's a three-pronged strategy. It's working. It's working. Ukraine is on the march. Just today, we're seeing signs that Russia has fully abandoned Kherson, although understandably the Ukrainians are skeptical. That's a huge blow against the Kremlin. When you're winning on the ground, you don't negotiate against yourself. We need to continue to change the facts on the ground to put Ukraine in the strongest position possible, and then Ukraine will decide when and in what manner they think it's appropriate to discuss things with Russia. But that's not the United States' place.
So what you're saying is is there light at the end of the tunnel on this Ukraine-Russia conflict?
What I think is this. On February 24th, when those Russian tanks crossed the border, which was something that U.S. intelligence had been warning about for months, but that our European and indeed our Ukrainian allies did not believe would actually happen. When those tanks crossed the border, if you had said to the top national security experts in the world that the situation 9 months later would look as it does today, they would never have believed you. They would have said, no way. Russia will take Kiev. Russia will take the south. They will landlock the country. They will annex Russophone populations in the east, and it will be successful. And that's just not been the case. We've seen that in many respects, the Russian military is a paper tiger. We have seen that their command and control style of invasion has been a failure. We have seen that the West has held together much better than people thought. And most importantly, we have seen the Ukrainians fight like lions. And given this success and momentum of the Ukrainian cause, you don't want to give Vladimir Putin an inch. Why would you make his job easier right now?
Right. We're speaking with Congressman Jake Auchincloss of the 4th Congressional District. So you had coming back to your district, you had a climate summit today. I believe it was it today or was it a couple? Okay, today with your predecessor, former Congressman Joe Kennedy. What was that like? What did you come out of that summit with?
I hosted 2 different conferences in the 2 days following the election, just to make clear where my priorities are at, frankly, regardless of who holds the gavel in Washington, D.C. So yesterday was an affordable housing conference in Attleboro and brought together elected officials, housing development experts in the nonprofit and for-profit spheres, as well as HUD and then the state agencies, to talk about the nuts and bolts of how we build more affordable housing. It's my opinion that the cost of housing is the single biggest challenge facing Massachusetts right now. And I'm here to be a strong federal partner to Governor Healy as she takes the reins and puts her political capital behind getting to solutions. So number one, we got to lower costs for people, particularly in housing. Number 2, today did a climate summit and had 3 separate panels, one on science and technology, one on Massachusetts initiatives, both in industry and policy, and then one on international affairs. Because climate action and clean energy is the generational priority of our era. We've made huge progress in the previous Congress. The Inflation Reduction Act was the biggest, boldest climate action in history, and the United States is on track to be within striking distance of our Paris Accord commitments. We really are leading as a country again, but the work is just beginning, and we need to seize the momentum that we have built in the 117th to go into the 118th and make progress on policy and on science and technology as well. And Massachusetts is the best place in the world to do that.
So speaking of going into the 118th, you did talk about this being a rejection of Republican extremism. We're seeing Lauren Boebert either losing or at least very much on her heels in her district in Colorado. It looks like there's narrowly a path for Democrats to retain the House. If not, this will be the first time you're in the minority during your tenure in Congress. What are you expecting with that transition?
It'll be less fun, the majority, no doubt about that. Yeah. I've been warned by my predecessor that it's can be brutal at times.
Yeah.
I think we have to be extremely focused on 2024, because in 2024, the Senate map is going to be incredibly challenging for Democrats. In 2024, the presidency is obviously going to be a jump ball. We all know how close these presidential elections are, and there's no doubt that it's going to be close. The House potentially could be the firewall for democracy. There's a scenario where it's that the House is what is preventing a true constitutional crisis. And we're within striking distance, regardless of whether we keep or lose the majority this cycle. We know we're going to be in striking distance to have the majority next cycle. And so we're going to have to double down on the strategy that really worked for us in 2022, which is, again, strong, authentic candidates who understand their districts, can speak to their districts, who are not getting wrapped up in some of the problematic national brand of the Democratic Party. Number two, who are laser focused on lowering costs across the board: housing, healthcare, childcare, higher education. And then number three, who are going to draw some very stark, very specific contrasts with their opponents on issues like abortion and protecting democracy. Voters don't like extremism. They don't like it. And when they have a chance to vote against extremism, they will do it. But it has to be made transparent.
What is, you said, something problematic with the Democrats' national brand? What exactly are the problematic labels?
Overall, it's a matter of tone. Democrats cannot condescend to voters. People don't want to be lectured. They want to be enlisted in a cause bigger than themselves. They do not want to be talked down to. And I do think that Democrats can do that. There's no question about it. On issues of public safety, on issues of climate even, it can be a matter of verbiage. It can be a matter of, we know what's best. The party has that challenge. We know that. We've talked about that internally and externally. But the candidates that you see that are winning in these last couple of days are candidates who very deliberately don't do that kind of stuff. My friend Jared Golden just won a very tough race in the Maine second.
Yeah.
Brutal seat, Trump +7, and came under just millions of dollars of attack ads. There is no member of Congress more authentic, who cares more about what his constituents think about an issue, who is more independent-minded, who is more willing to stand up to his own party when necessary if he thinks they're getting it wrong, than Jared Golden. And guess what? He's coming back to Congress. He's coming back to Congress when many of the pundits said it just wasn't possible.
Yeah, I know you went up to Maine with Congressman Golden. You also were an early supporter, even during the primary, of Seth Magaziner, who won a nationally looked at race, a race that the Republicans felt they could win against Alan Fung, the mayor of Cranston. And in fact, Fung was leading outside the margin for error in polls. How was Magaziner able to win that election, do you think?
Seth deserves a lot of credit for running that race the way he did. I think there was a lot of pressure in those last several weeks because Kevin McCarthy made Fung really his poster boy for midterms and put a ton of money and a ton of time into lifting him up. So Seth deserves a ton of credit for just being disciplined and running the race that he knew could be successful. And he's a known quantity in Rhode Island, well-respected, obviously state treasurer, and people understood that he was competent. He was very clear about the issues he was running on. It was about cost. It was about tying Alan Fung to the extremist agenda of the Republican Party. And I know that people say, Alan's a moderate. He was a moderate mayor. He's a moderate guy. If you're going to vote for Kevin McCarthy and then Kevin McCarthy's going to pick up the phone and call Mar-a-Lago to get marching orders, if you're going to vote for a national abortion ban, I'm sorry, that doesn't put you in the moderate bucket. And I think drawing that contrast very clearly for voters can pay off. Because if a party is going to espouse unpopular, out of the mainstream positions, then their candidates are going to have to own those positions.
So we're speaking with Congressman Jake Auchincloss. Congressman, you I believe, sit on the January 6th committee. That incident happened just as you were sworn in, like one of your very first days in Congress. What are you guys uncovering in the January 6th committee, and what are you looking forward to uncovering with the January 6th committee?
I don't sit on the committee. No freshmen are on the committee.
Oh.
I have certainly been watching and supporting its work closely. What the committee is doing is laying out a searing and detailed fact pattern of the events leading up to and the day itself, which clearly point to culpability for Donald Trump himself. Incitement of insurrection is a violation of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, and it should preclude anybody who is guilty of it from running for federal office again.
Right.
This isn't Jake's opinion. This is the Constitution. And so I think the January 6th fact pattern should be used to disqualify the 45th president from trying to seek office again.
So coming back to Massachusetts, you mentioned Governor-elect Healy. I've spoken with her on this issue. I've spoken with Lieutenant Governor-elect Kim Driscoll. They're both champions of offshore wind. One of the things you campaigned on when you first ran for Congress was a robust climate plan, including offshore wind, which is big in the southern part of your district. What are you looking forward to working with the Healy administration on offshore wind? And what can we look forward to here in the South Coast coming with offshore wind?
Two things in particular. There's a lot happening, but I'll point to two. Actually, three if you'll give me the time.
Sure.
The first is we gotta get over this hiccup that we're having here with Commonwealth Wind and renegotiation of that contract, and that's going to potentially straddle the Baker and the Healy administrations. I've already made clear to all interested parties that I'm here to be a convener and to help those negotiations. Those negotiations they're not really with me. They're between the utilities and the state and the developer. But to the extent that I can help bring people together, I've done that before. I'll do it again, and I'm in close conversations with those parties. And it's really in everybody's interest that we get this contract negotiated and get turbines in the water, jobs, and its energy. Number two, as part of the Chips and Science Act, which we passed about a year ago, maybe 6 months ago, we put significant funding towards basic research. And the National Science Foundation is now issuing grants for projects that can tie together basic research with economic and workforce development. And I've been coordinating with a number of institutions in Massachusetts, Tufts, the Aquarium, Woods Hole, and then the municipalities of New Bedford and Fall River, Bristol Community College, all of them, on a grant application to the National Science Foundation to see if we can turbocharge offshore wind, not just the research, but also the economic and workforce development. Very excited about that. Very competitive grant. Very, very competitive grant. But we're certainly going to put our best foot forward here in Massachusetts for it. And then third is there's a continued effort in Congress to saddle the offshore wind industry with regulations that are really going to be detrimental to its development, and I've been fighting against them successfully this Congress, and I will continue to fight against it next Congress, and maybe even put it to bed by trying to negotiate a bipartisan deal.
What in particular? I remember you having a discussion with a Republican congressman, I think from a southern state, about something regarding foreign vessels. What in particular do you think in Congress is there that's a threat against offshore wind?
It's really this tension, and it cuts across parties. It's not even necessarily D versus R. It's a tension between the desire for American-made, American-manned wind installation vessels, very expensive vessels, of which there are only about 3 operative in the world right now, and the desire to get this thing underway and then grow with the industry. And, both sides have good faith arguments here. This isn't something where one side's, all right and one side's all wrong. It's a matter of practicality and trying to get to a negotiated solution where both people feel like, hey, we're protecting and developing American shipbuilding, but we're also allowing for offshore wind to really take off. There's a negotiation to be had here. There's a compromise to be had here. Unfortunately, right now, the other side is not putting forward things that I think are good for the South Coast, and the South Coast is always going to come first in these negotiations for me. So we're fighting back hard. I think we're going to win this term, but remain willing to sit down and try to get to a place that's a good compromise that both sides feel like they win on.
So we're speaking with Congressman Jake Auchincloss of the 4th Congressional District. So during your first term, you had Speaker Pelosi come to your district. I believe you had Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff. You've always been very active in your district when you're home, back here in Massachusetts. What have you done this trip home in your district besides the climate summit to, just reach out to your constituents and see what's important to them?
Yeah, well, we had Joe Biden come here, too, to Brayton Point,
That's
speaking
true.
of offshore wind.
Yes.
I've been all over the district in the last month. As you said, October has been a district work period. Fall River, Attleboro, Taunton, as well as the inner suburbs of Boston and the northern part of the district. It's really one of the best ways I like to engage is in small group discussions. I feel like I get the most out of those sometimes. I mean, there's always different formats that make sense. Today was a much bigger conference because of the issue in the panels. But for one example, I did a food security roundtable a couple weeks ago, where I really just got to listen for an hour and a half to the nonprofit providers of food for some of the most vulnerable people in the Massachusetts fourth, and those kinds of conversations are oftentimes where I learn the most, and then also where the germs of new initiatives or legislation come from.
We're speaking with Congressman Jake Auchincloss of the 4th Congressional District. So you sat on the House Transportation Committee. You were Vice Chair of Financial Services. Going into your new term, speaking with Speaker and potentially Minority Leader Pelosi, are you planning on retaining those committee appointments? Have you spoken about any other committee appointments?
We'll see how it shakes out. We got to tabulate the votes. We got to elect new leadership, and then we got to do committee assignments. So there's a lot of dominoes to fall before the committees are placed. But these are two good committees that I'm on: Transportation Infrastructure and Financial Services. T&I has allowed me to be very involved in the bipartisan infrastructure law and to weigh in a lot, I think, helpfully on offshore wind and protecting that industry. So that's been a good committee. Financial Services, housing, obviously, has been a big element of that, as well as community development. So I've enjoyed them. I think we've done good work on them, but I'll have to evaluate it once more of these dominoes fall.
So before I let you go, Congressman, I haven't had a chance to speak with you since the Inflation Reduction Act has been passed, and I wanted to get your thoughts on that, and what people here in Massachusetts can expect with the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act.
Two big things. First of all, biggest, boldest climate action and clean energy commitment in history. It's difficult to overstate how transformative this is. It will cut U.S. greenhouse gas emissions by 40% by 2030. It is turbocharging all of the science and technology that we know we need to get to the other side of the climate catastrophe and avoid some of the worst effects of what the current trajectory is for 2050. This is the seminal piece of climate policy ever. So that's one. And then number two, lower healthcare costs. In January, seniors across America are going to see their Medicare premiums go down. They're going to see their Social Security checks go up by about $120 on average. First time that 1-2 punch has happened in more than a decade. That's critical. We are facing a period of higher costs. It's a lot of reasons for that. It's monetary policy. It's energy shock. It's food prices. It's housing prices. There's no one-size-fits-all solution, and I wouldn't claim otherwise. But where we can help, we need to, and lowering healthcare premiums is a darn good start.
Congressman Jake Auchincloss, appreciate you coming on. It's always a pleasure, and congratulations on your reelection.
Thanks, Marcus.
Have a good one.
Download the
Come to South Coast Tonight. I'm Marcus. 508-996-0500. That was Congressman Jake Auchincloss. Represents a good chunk of our listening audience here in the South Coast. Has had a very high-profile first term and looks to be gearing up for a very high-profile second term as well. 508-996-0500. Good evening.
Hey, good evening.
Hey.
Hey, I picked up, you asked the congressman, about the Inflation Reduction Act, what we can expect, and I didn't hear anything about inflation reduction. I just heard about greenhouse gases and healthcare.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the whole the wind farm deal, it seemed like it fell through because of maybe inflation.
Yeah, I think that's just one company. With Commonwealth Wind. I mean, Mayflower Wind's sending their turbines out to New Bedford in about a month or so. So that seems very much on schedule. With the Inflation Reduction Act, their arguments are that there's going to be. Look, it's branding, right? I agree with you. It's just branding. Their arguments are going to be like, oh, there's healthcare savings, and that's going to reduce inflation. And, if we invest in green energy, it's going to reduce the cost of, we're going to be less dependent on oil, and that's going to reduce, the cost of fuel and all of that. But I think it's just branding. I agree. It's
I just wonder what the cost is. I mean, I'm sure someone's already went through it, but I mean, so a lot of these things don't work unless they're in greater than 200 feet of water and 30 miles offshore. I mean, what does that cost to build that far out, and run the cables all the way back here, and then with all the maintenance that far out? I don't know. I just think that it seems like there's a huge cost to build it and maintain it with no guarantee that it's going to do anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's new here. It's not new in Europe and the Nordic countries. You've heard Mayor Mitchell's out in the UK, because out in Europe they do have offshore wind, and now they're introducing it here. I guess you're right. It's still an unknown here. And we'll see. I agree with you there. We don't not actually know what the impact is going to be, but
and everyone here is set up for it. And hey, I'm all for using wind power and sun power and all that stuff, but I think it's going to be a gradual transition. It would be great if some of this inflation reduction could reduce the here and now, the electricity and the oil and the gas, and then maybe one day slowly transfer over. But it just seems like it's not going that way.
Well, I don't think anybody thinks that the wind power is going to there is no amount of wind power right now. Wind power as it stands cannot sustain an entire electrical grid. So that's it's not it's 10-15% maybe of an electrical grid in certain states. So that's I think most people who are even pushing wind power right now do agree that it's not the cure all. It may be one day, but it's not the cure all now.
Yeah, there's a listing right now on Craigslist in South Coast. Someone's giving away a free 200-foot wind tower with the turbine attached. They said, "Come and get it."
Oh, really?
Yeah, literally.
200.
But I've just you need a big yacht to put it in, though, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah,
it's out there.
Yeah, that's surprising.
Yeah, it's up there. Take a look. South Coast Craigslist.
Okay.
Yeah, have a good one.
You as well. 508-996-0500. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely a believer in renewable energy, and I think it is going to bring good things. But yeah, it's new to this industry, right? And there's a lot of people that do believe in it. Charlie Baker, the state legislature. It is offshore wind. It is we're setting up to be the staging area for an entirely new industry. Commonwealth Wind, that does need to be adjusted, but not everything can be, I think, a seamless transition at the upstart. I think about the golf course, the advanced manufacturing campus. A lot of the economic factors right now are making that difficult to execute at the outset, but I think most people agree that adding an advanced manufacturing campus, adding, having the opportunity to add 1,000 new jobs and developable property obviously increase tax revenue is a good thing for the city. It's just, and for the region, it's just difficult to, it's just at the time difficult to implement, just because something I think has a hiccup, at the outset doesn't mean, once you get over those, once you get over the growing pains, let's say, that it won't be both a profitable and, more importantly, serviceable. It won't provide doesn't mean it won't be profitable and it won't provide a good service, is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, I mean, I think until it gets here, until those turbines get up and we see the impacts of it, I think I'm not. I think it's fine to be. I think it's fine to be skeptical of things until we see them. But I'm definitely a believer in that. Obviously, we're seeing the gas prices and all that. It's never going to get. It might get better, but it's never going to get that much better, right? It's never going to get that much better. So I think we need to, energy costs in general. So I think we need to move on to ways to try to find that, make that more tenable. Because right now, it's definitely not tenable. All right, I'm going to take a break. By the way, tonight we have, after the congressman, and we'll have the podcast up later soon. After the congressman, we're going to have Armin Thomas. I had him on a couple weeks ago to preview the midterms. He's an elections mapper. So we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about what, what to make of all this stuff, right? What to make of all the midterms, the results, the pending results. It was Lauren Boebert, the high-profile, far-right congresswoman from Colorado. Is she going to survive? She's in a very, very tight re-election race over there with an Aspen city councilor. So is Raphael Warnock going to win? They've got a runoff, I think, but is Mark Kelly going to get reelected? Right. So there's a lot to make sense out of. Not here in Massachusetts, everything was basically decided. Right. We know that. By the way, I thought Barry had an excellent interview with Sheriff Hodgson today. I thought it was pretty good. So 508-996-0500. We're going to take a break.
Listen to us live anywhere in the world on the WBSM app.
Hey, Pete.
WBSM isn't just a broadcast. It's also a podcast. Get all of our podcasts at WBSM.com, the WBSM app, or just search WBSM on your favorite podcast provider.
Hey, welcome back to South Coast Tonight, 508-996-0500. Yeah, so, the DPU is giving the Avangrid an opportunity. They're extending the opportunity to make a decision on whether or not they're going to take the contract, and it was based on their purchase power agreements. So I know DPU said they're not going to. I think they said they're not going to renegotiate the purchase power agreements. So they're giving Avangrid an opportunity to say whether they're going to accept the terms or put in or request to dismiss it. I don't know how that's going to work out. I just don't know. I think they granted him a few days extension because I believe the deadline was in November 9th. So it feels like there's probably a lot more investment. There's so much investment in this, and it's been such like almost a decades long project. It would be strange to drop it last minute, but we'll see. We'll see. Well, Mayor Mitchell's in the UK now. He should be back tomorrow. Is he back tonight? I think he was back for the Veterans Day parade, right? So maybe he's back tonight. And if he is, then he'll be here. He'll be here at least next week on the Tim Weisberg show, and I think he can provide a clearer picture on his trip to the UK and the status of the Commonwealth Wind project. My guess, this is just purely me speculating, not really having like an inside track or really even a greater depth of knowledge than most people on this. Just saying, at this juncture, when they're ready to start their contracts, feels like there's, putting all these things in motion for over, a years-long period of time and putting all the investment they've put into it. It seems difficult that it's just going to, basically all be kiboshed at essentially the last minute. I don't know if that's going to happen. All right, I got to take a break. 508-996-0500 is how you can get on the program I'm going to take another break, and then we'll be right back. This is South Coast Tonight. I'm Marcus. Chris will be back tomorrow, and actually, it'll be Friday night, which is always a fun show. But Chris will be back tomorrow, and we'll be back with former New Bedford Mayor Scott Lang. So you want to tune in for that. Scott has a lot of experience we're going to definitely ask him to react to the midterms, react to the state elections. Obviously, Scott has a lot of national, local, and statewide experience in campaigning and strategy, particularly in the Democratic Party. So, looking forward to speaking with him on Friday, and it's fun. It's fun to be on with. All right, I'm going to take a break.
The WBSM app is...
Guess 508-996-0500 is how you can get in the program. We had Congressman Jake Auchincloss, good friend of the show. He was just on, and we're going to have Armin Thomas. He's a elections mapper at a political elections website called Split Ticket. They do a lot of good work trying to figure out, basically who might win based on the numbers and why somebody did win. So kind of like a 538, right? And I think they do good work. So I'm going to talk to Mr. Thomas in the 8 o'clock hour about all this, this, I think, still chaos. It's been, we still don't know who has control of which chamber, right? The fact that the Democrats even have a path to victory is a failure of the Republican Party, just based on historic trends. I mean, you heard Jake Auchincloss say that. He said, historically, what do they lose, 18 seats at least? They're going to be well under what the historic margin of victory for a party out of power, if there is even a margin of victory. I mean, if they come back and they lose both chambers, that's going to be incredible. And it's all but going to assure that Biden's going to run again, I think. I said that, I might have said that on air. I don't know if I did, but I was like, I think Biden's going to do fine in these midterms, like better than Obama did in 2010. And if he does, then why don't they just roll him out again? It's a lot easier than having a president resign, right? His vice president's a lot more unpopular than he is, especially if he has to go against Donald Trump. By the way, I think Donald Trump beats Ron DeSantis in a primary. I think it's going to happen. If that's the primary, if it's just one versus, if it's DeSantis versus Trump, I think Trump wins. But all right, we're going to talk to Armin Thomas in the 8 o'clock hour.